And the first casualty in any kind of protest or any kind of violent movement has been this public transport, without realizing that it is we who will have to pay or who will have to compensate the cost, right? Neither Modi or nor Sonia or nor any political leader to go and pay these things for these damages from their pocket, right? At the end of day, after this things subside, right, you will have to suffer. Few buses will not ply on those routes for another 2 months until the state makes arrangement, and when the state makes arrangement, it will be compensated from the taxes, indirect or direct, that you or me have paid, right? So people do not understand. People do just in a fit of rage, right, they do these kind of activities, and ultimately we have to suffer, right? Hello everybody. So in this video we are going to discuss part 4A of Indian Constitution that deals with fundamental duties. And if you ask me to define what is fundamental duties, I'll say that it is nothing but our moral and social responsibility or our moral and social obligation towards the state, right? When you compare fundamental duties from the fundamental rights that state has extended to us, you see the expense that or number of articles that has been dedicated to fundamental rights. So fundamental rights, which we have studied previously in previous chapter, right, is spread over article 12 to article 35, and when you compare number of articles that has been dedicated to fundamental duties, there is only one sub article, that is article 15(1)(a), that too by the amendment that we are going to discuss, right? So it is in this context that it becomes very important that we take our fundamental duties very seriously, because more number of right has been extended to you. You do have so many fundamental rights, but only one article has been dedicated to fundamental duties. I hope you would have read this observation. This is not a quote, but my observation of a comparison between fundamental right, fundamental duties, right? So we are going to use this observation in course of this video, right? I hope you have read this, right? There are certain prerequisites, right, before delving into this chapter, and those prerequisites are that you need to have an understanding of preamble, few chapters, and that is preamble of Indian Constitution, then directive principles, and then fundamental rights. Why I am saying this? Because the vocabulary that has been used in this chapter, that is fundamental duties, similar kind of vocabulary you will find in DPSP as well and preamble as well, and to some extent you will find similar kind of vocabulary in fundamental rights section as well. And in past there has been questions in prelims UPSC, right, where they have mixed provisions from these chapters and have asked ki identify whether this statement belong to fundamental rights section or DPSP section or preamble. And in that situation, when you are marking questions in pressurized environment, it becomes very difficult to mark right choices. And that's why I'll recommend, whenever you are reading this fundamental duties, or for that matter when you are reading preamble, right, be conscious about vocabularies that you are reading. Why I am saying this, right? Let us get into next slide and let us see that why I am saying so. So if you see article 45, if you know, right, it deals with DPSP. It is the article of DPSP. So article 45 deals with early childhood care and the education of child from 0 to 6 years, right? Then you go to article 21A, which talks about fundamental rights section, right, which talks about right to education. Then again it is talking about education, but education of whom? Children from 6 years to 14 years, right? Then you discuss this article 51AK, right? Article 51AK, it belongs to fundamental duties that we are going to discuss. This article as well is discussing about education, but the thing is, the only difference is that is talking about parental responsibility to send their children to the schools, right? So the theme is same, right? It is talking about children's education. The only difference is that it is talking about early childhood care and the education of those child from 0 to 6 years, here from 6 to 14 years, and here parental responsibility, right? So the thing that I was talking about, you may have all these three provisions present in a MCQ. Let us take an example, right? So here is a MCQ that can be asked in UPSC, where you have mixture of these three statements, and one of the statement is from DPSP, one of the statement could be from fundamental duties, and the third provision may be from what you call preamble, right? And because vocabulary is same that we saw in this the first example, right? Because vocabulary is same, you might make the wrong choices and you will end up killing your marks, right? That's why I was talking. Let us take another example. You have this word called fraternity that has been used in preamble. Then when we'll see this fundamental duties, you will see that there is some word called promotion of common brotherhood that has been used in fundamental duties. Now, if you have read this preamble section very carefully, but not read this fundamental duties, and when there is a question on this fraternity word, that where this fraternity word has been used, just because you have read preamble, you will think, okay, preamble में तो use हुआ था, but I am not sure about duties, जबकि duty में भी ये use हो रहा है, fundamental duties में भी, and because this fraternity and common brotherhood mix होते हैं, you may again end up marking the wrong choices, right? Again, 2 number का loss. Let us take another example. Article 14A, right? Okay, one notice, whenever you see this suffix A with any article, right? This is additional information. This is not related to this chapter. So, whenever you see this word A as a suffix in any article, वो आर्टिकल जो होगा वो अमेंडेड आर्टिकल होगा, बिकॉज ओरिजिनल आर्टिकल वुड बी 48 एंड दिस वर्ड ए हैज बीन एडेड आफ्टर द अमेंडमेंट. सिमिलर थिंग इज विद दिस 51A, then 21A, all these are nothing but all these articles are amendment. Returning back to this lecture, so 48A talks about protection of wildlife and all those environment. Then again in this chapter, this 48A deals with what? DPSP, right? Protection of environment and wildlife. Similar article, similar subject you will find in this article, that is fundamental duty as well, that is 51AG. It will also talk about similar subject, right? Again, when a question will pop up and it will ask whether this belong only to DPSP or fundamental duties, you will end up confusing, and that is what I was talking about, that when you are reading these chapters, be very careful that what words and what vocabulary you are reading, right? That's why I recommended this, that's why I recommended that those 3 chapters, that is preamble, then DPSP and fundamental rights, should be read in tandem with this chapter, and you need to be very sure about the vocabulary that has been used in this chapter, right? So, I hope you would have understood the interlinkages that these 4 chapters have, and that's why I was recommending you to have a hands-on those chapters as well, right? So, this was the example. Now, one more thing, when you are watching this lecture, make sure कि आप एक अलर्ट माइंड से पढ़े, बिकॉज दीज आर 4 क्वेश्चंस दैट यू विल फाइंड एट द एंड ऑफ दिस चैप्टर, एंड मेक श्योर कि आप अलर्ट माइंड से, एक्टिव माइंड से पढ़ें, पैसिव माइंड होकर ना पढ़ें, बिकॉज यू हैव टू अटेम्प्ट दीज questions, right? So, make sure कि whatever time this lecture will take, whether 40 minutes or 45 minutes, whatever time it will take, right? Just watch this video in one go and thereafter try to attempt these questions, right? So, let us move to the next slide and let us discuss the significance of fundamental duties, right? So, if you have any idea about Indian polity, you would be aware that this fundamental duties section was not present in our original constitution. This has been added through some amendment. The amendment we are going to discuss, right? We are just discussing the significance. So, what is the necessity of having it added in 1976? What political, was there any political need, or were as a citizen we were felt that we were very unresponsible, right? So, before starting that debate, let us understand or let us read this quote. Let us start this lecture with this quote by American president, that is John F. Kennedy, and he says that ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. So, here the emphasis is on citizens' duty towards the state, then state's duty towards citizens. So, if you have read some polity, you would be aware that when Western democracy started emerging, when capitalist societies started emerging, right, you will notice that there was more emphasis on liberal state. State was called liberal only when it was extending more amount of rights to the citizen than expecting any kind of duties. So, in that environment we got independence when Western democracy had almost matured, and so there was a trend of extending more rights to the people than imposing any duties on the citizens. So in that context, we got independence, and in that context we had our constitution, and that's why perhaps constitutional maker didn't feel of adding this fundamental duties into our constitution, right? But in 1976 you will see that we had this chapter, right? But this chapter addition, although many people attribute political reason behind addition of this chapter, but I'll let you know that why this addition, or rather, although fundamental right is not legally enforceable, again that we'll discuss in course of this video. So fundamental right is not legally enforceable, but looking at the current circumstances, when we are concerned, we as citizens, most of the citizens that you will see are concerned more about fundamental rights than fundamental duties. It worries me, right? So let us take two current examples which will reaffirm the necessity of having this fundamental duties. So if you have been following current affair in last 2 or 3 days, the Hindu, if you have been reading, you would be aware about this case. Kanika Kapoor, she is a famous singer. So she returns from some European country on 9th of March, when this coronavirus had spread almost in every European country, although in India we started taking cognizance from first week itself, right? So as per the media report, when she had skipped what we call a screening test, thereafter she attends many public functions, including one in Rashtrapati Bhavan, then in Lucknow she throws some parties, right? And that was attended by many MPs, and these are the people who came into her contact. Right now she is in quarantine, where she has been tested positive for the coronavirus. Now as per the media reports, she ran from the screening, right? She didn't get herself tested, right? But as per her version, she is saying that no, there was no provision of screening when she landed on the airport, right? Because how can one escape the screening? How can one escape the security net, right? So I was allowed to go. But the question rises that you are educated, you belong to a privileged society, you are coming from the European nation where this virus has created a havoc, right? So even if authorities were not there for the screening, right, you should have gone for a self quarantine, right? If you are coming from the countries which are affected from this virus, which has lost 300 or 400 lives, you need to be careful about your life. And if you are not careful about your life, even then you should be, as a social responsible citizen, you should be careful about these people's lives. You should have imposed that self quarantine, but you did not do that. You chose to have parties, you chose to go into Rashtrapati Bhavan, you did all the things which could have endangered other people's life, right? Anyway, let us not believe media's version about she escaping screening test. Let us believe her version that okay, fine, a security test was not available or screening test was not available, right? But still she should have subjected herself to the self quarantine, right? But then believe her version alone, that state was not offering those kind of services, right? So here state is to blame, right? Not Kanika Kapoor. Let us take another example where state, here is the video. I'll let you know the video before let me discuss the context. So here the state is handling everything in a good way, right? State is equipped right now. They are offering the screening test. The only thing is that the wait time was little larger, 3 hours or 4 hours, because the state, our healthcare systems is in completely in shambles. So you can expect that the demand and supply would not be matched. So people had to wait perhaps for around 3 or 4 hours at the airport, people returning from Europe or America or Western countries, and see the ruckus that they have created on the IGI airport, right? Just because there was a delay of 4 hours or 5 hours, right? Without understanding Indian economic reality, they are comparing Indian economic realities to what they are getting in European countries, without realizing the poor ground realities or the poor people that has to go through all these agony every day. They had to stand for 3 hours or 4 hours on one day and see the ruckus they have created. Their passports had been taken by the authorities so that they do not run that security net, right? And see the ruckus that they created on the IGI airport. Let us listen to the audio, and thereafter we will have the discussion. So the man in this video is shouting that shoot us, we don't want to live here, we don't feel safe here, your washrooms are not sanitized and all kind of things, right? Yes, your claim may be true, right? Perhaps washroom may not have been sanitized, but there are other provisions, right? They are providing 5-star facilities on the paid basis, right? If you do not care about, see, in her case the blame was that state was not offering the services, but here the state is offering services, but you are endangering, you don't want to wait for 3 or 4 hours, and so you want to endanger other people, lower middle class lives. You can, if you are affected by coronavirus, right, you do have money, you belong to privileged class, but try to understand, if this corona spreads to the lower middle class of Indian society, what havoc it will create. Our healthcare systems is not that equipped to handle the way it is being handled in Europe, right? So this is the social responsibility or social irresponsibility that I was talking about, and it is in this context that inclusion of fundamental duties can be justified, right? Although there may be many criticism that none of the democratic countries except Japan have these fundamental duties, and you have inspired it from USSR, a communist country. But when you have these kind of citizenry, right, you need to have stringent rules, you need to have stringent duties, and that should be rather legally enforceable, although legal enforcement of fundamental duties is not a concept in Indian constitution. But from my assessment, when you do have such kind of irresponsible citizens, right, who do not handle things maturely, right, what is this, right? This lady is throwing garbage, and it's not only about the story of this lady is only, right? This is the story every day that our mothers or our neighbors or other, we as well, right, we do, right? We throw our, we clean our houses, we are very good at cleaning our house, but we are very good at destroying the public places as well, right? This is the bus being burnt in Delhi riots. And why only Delhi riots, right? You had this Jat movement in Haryana, you had this Patidar movement in Gujarat, and the first casualty in any kind of protest or any kind of violent movement has been this public transport, without realizing that it is we who will have to pay or who will have to compensate the cost, right? Neither Modi or nor Sonia or nor any political leader to go and pay these things for these damages from their pocket, right? At the end of day, after this things subside, right, you will have to suffer. Few buses will not ply on those routes for another 2 months until the state makes arrangement, and when the state makes arrangement, it will be compensated from the taxes, indirect or direct, that you or me have paid, right? So people do not understand, people do just in a fit of rage, right, they do these kind of activities, and ultimately we have to suffer, right? Here is a quote again: nearly 3 people dies every 10 minutes, right, in road accident due to drunken driving, right? You had recently one IAS officer, right? We are considered, UPSC aspirant is considered to exhibit very responsible behavior, but the person, IAS officer, right, he was doing drunken driving in Kerala, and he mowed down on a journalist, right? He perhaps is right now suspended, and Kerala government has instituted inquiry on him, right? So you do have these kind of social responsibility, and that's why this fundamental duties becomes very important, right? So after having enough of this discussion, let us discuss this significance. So fundamental rights have emphasized enough of individualistic, right? We already have discussed that fundamental rights, we always talks about fundamental rights, that oh, we do have this right, we do have that right, state is not extending, state is misusing our rights, right? It is not allowing us to protest, it is not allowing us to do that thing. So fundamental right has emphasized enough on individualistic orientation, and hence this tilt, right, this individualistic orientation tilt that we have come into, right, that needs to be balanced by imbibing communitarian values, societal values, right? And fundamental duties is nothing but trying to inculcate those communitarian values inside us, right? They serve citizen as a fundamental duties, right? Fundamental duties serve citizens as a reminder that while enjoying the rights, they have certain duties towards state, that they, or a state, if you don't want to use, you use a more positive word, that is society. So along with enjoying fundamental rights, we also have some duties towards state. What's duties? Not to do this, not to do this, not to do this. So these kind of duties that we are going to discuss. Then third, it also serves as a reminder to the antisocial एलिमेंट्स, ठीक है, कि ये सब चीज़ें नहीं करनी है, राइट. So this was about significance. Let us discuss to the next slide and discuss this, what is the origin and evolution of fundamental duties, right. So we already have discussed, right, that fundamental duties were not part of our original constitution. This has been borrowed from erstwhile USSR. This USSR right now is not in existence. What you do have in existence is Russia, right. So in 1976 Congress set up a committee, right. So mind you, not parliament, not executive, this committee was set up by Congress, and that headed by Swaran Singh, right. So that's why by his name this committee was called Swaran Singh committee. So he recommended inclusion of 8 fundamental duties into constitution, but executive added their own suggestion as well, and what you have is 10 fundamental duties, right. So they added 10 fundamental duties by inserting another article, that is 15(1)(a) through this amendment, 42nd amendment in 1976, right. So and even out of 8 recommendation that Swaran Singh committee, right, 3 of his recommendation were not considered, right. So only 5 of his recommendation and 5 were added by executive. So what are those 3 recommendation that Swaran Singh committees were not considered? So the first recommendation was that imposition of penalty for non-compliance of fundamental duties. Then second is duty to pay taxes, that was also not added, right. And then the third is that any such imposition of penalty in case of non-compliance, that cannot be called into court, right. So these 3 recommendation of Swaran Singh out of those 8 recommendation could not make it to the final list, right. So this was about Swaran Singh committee in 1976. The next development in this origin and evolution was that in 1999 you had this Verma committee, right. Thereafter 86th amendment, through 86th amendment you will see that one more fundamental duty was added, that was 11th, right. 86th amendment added one more FC. Oh, it should have been D, I guess, right. So FD. So there is a minor correction. So through 86th amendment in 2002, when you had the subject matter of article 45 changed, right, and you had addition of article 21 in fundamental rights section, right. So at the same time you had this inculcation of 51K, right. So this is about the evolution. So right now what we do have, along with these 10 fundamental duties, one more in 2002. So in total you have 11 fundamental duties, and over these years this is how it has evolved, right. Let us get into next slide and let us discuss features of fundamental duties, right. So like DPSPs, that is directive principle of state policies, FD, that is fundamental duties, are also judicially unenforceable. So what is the meaning of judicially unenforceable? After having discussed this DPSP, you should be aware, right. So the meaning of judicially unenforceable is simple, that because there is no legal sanction that the executive or parliament has mentioned behind implementation or behind violation of fundamental duty, judiciary cannot get it implemented, right. So if I choose not to protect the environment, if I choose not to abide by the constitution, right, you cannot drag me to the court saying that this fellow is not following, although there are certain other legal provision that is mentioned separately, by which if I do not honor national symbol, if I try to insult, right, you can file case on me, right. But as part of fundamental duty package, right, you cannot drag, or I cannot drag you into the court and ask judiciary to enforce these fundamental duties, right. However, judiciary can take cognizance of fundamental duties while testing the validity of any law. So what is the meaning, right. So this provision we had discussed in directive principle of state policy as well. There may be at times when acts passed by parliament or state assembly do land up in Supreme Court or High Court to decide the constitutionality of that act, and you will see that if that act is violating any of the fundamental right or any of the constitutional provision, that act may be declared ultra vires by these courts. But if that act is violating any of the constitutional provision, but at the same time if it is enforcing any kind of fundamental duties, you may find that courts may consider validating that act. And I am saying that court may consider, आई एम नॉट सेइंग कि कोर्ट बिल्कुल इसको पास ही कर देगा इस एक्ट को. अगर कॉस्ट बेनिफिट देखा जाएगा, राइट, व्हाट इज मोर इम्पोर्टेंट, राइट, वेदर इट द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल राइट दैट इट इज टेकिंग अवे, वेदर दोज कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल राइट इज मोर इम्पोर्टेंट और द इम्प्लीमेंटेशन ऑफ फंडामेंटल ड्यूटीज. सो एटलीस्ट दे विल कंसीडर, राइट, इवन इफ दे आर दैट एक्ट, पर्टिकुलर एक्ट इज वायलेटिंग एनी ऑफ द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल प्रोविजन, एंड इफ दे आर सजेस्टिंग to implement fundamental duties, right, so that act at least may be considered by those courts, right. So that's the meaning of however judiciary can take cognizance of fundamental duty while testing validity of any law. The second is that fundamental duties does not have legal sanction, right. We already have discussed कि भाई इसके implementation मतलब अगर कोई violate कर रहा है fundamental duties का तो उसके वायलेशन के लिए कोई लीगल सैंक्शन नहीं है, बट पार्लियामेंट इज फ्री टू इन्फोर्स देम बाय सुटेबल लेजिस्लेशन. मीन्स पार्लियामेंट एक कोई लॉ ला सकती है कि भाई कोई वायलेट कर रहा है, ठीक है, जो हम लोग डिस्कस करेंगे अभी, राइट, जो फंडामेंटल ड्यूटीज, तो अगर कोई वायलेट कर रहा है तो पार्लियामेंट डज होल्ड राइट कि उनको एनफोर्स करवा सकते. बट एज ऑफ नाउ देयर इज नो लीगल सैंक्शन बिहाइंड एनफोर्समेंट ऑफ दिस फंडामेंटल ड्यूटी. द थर्ड इज दैट फंडामेंटल ड्यूटीज आर ऑब्लिगेशन of citizens alone, right. You cannot expect foreigners visiting India as a tourist or for that matter for any purpose to value your fundamental duties, right. So it is obligation only on citizens. The fourth is that whether it can be amended. Yes, right, we just discussed during that origin and evolution कि 86th amendment हुआ था in 2002, right, by which you had that 11th fundamental duties, right. So yes, it can be very much amended. Then classification. So classification में दो category में किया गया है. There are certain duties that you will see positive duties, then certain duties are negative duties. Then another measure is that civic, few duties are civic duties and few duties are moral duties. Then rights and duties are correlative, right. So while enjoying any kind of fundamental right, while exercising my freedom of speech, right, it is my duty कि भाई मैं इतना ना, मतलब मेरा स्पीच जो है कम्युनली चार्ज ना इन्वायरमेंट में मैं ना बोलूँ, राइट. आई नीड टू बी रिस्पॉन्सिबल, राइट. अगर मैं प्रोटेस्ट कर रहा हूँ, राइट, किसी साइट पे बैठ के, तो मैं किसी और के फ्रीडम ऑफ मूवमेंट को, राइट, आई शुड बी सिटिंग एट अप्रोप्रिएट प्लेस, राइट. आई शुड नॉट बी यूजिंग दैट लाउड वॉइसेस माइक इन रेजिडेंस एरियाज, राइट. सो दैट्स व्हाई दिस राइट्स एंड ड्यूटीज आर कोरिलेटिव, right. In democracy it is important that citizens are conscious to their duties so that everyone is able to enjoy his or her right. Your your freedom to protest can't curtail someone's freedom of movement, right. We already have discussed. So this is about the features of fundamental duties, right. Few factoids that you need to remember for prelim, right. So there were two amendments. So 42nd amendment in 1976, right, by which fundamental duty were included in our constitution. Then 86th amendment, right, by which you had 51AK, right. Then two committees, Swaran Singh committee, Verma committee. Then 2 years, that is 1976, 2002, and there are 11 fundamental duties, right. So these are the factoids that you need to remember, right. Let us move to the next slide and let us start discussing what is called your fundamental duties, right. So this is the first fundamental duty that we do have, that is 51A subclause A, and it reads to abide by constitution and respect its ideals, institutions, national flag and national anthem. One thing that you see, one thing if you could notice, national song is missing from this list, right. So it may be due to the political environment prevailing in 1976, and even now that situation exists, right. We do have issues over Vande Mataram, right. This has perhaps some religious undertones claimed by few people, community, particular community, and perhaps understanding their sensitivity towards national song, perhaps that could not have been included, right. So that was the pointer that I had wanted to raise. So if you break up this in two parts, abide by the constitution and respect the ideals, institution, national flag and national anthem. National song is missing, that's why this double strike through. So when it says that respect its ideals, what kind of ideals it would have been talking about, right. So if you see the ideals that has been mentioned, the goals that has been mentioned, In the preambles, all these ideals, it is talking about justice, liberty, equality and fraternity, right? You can further break it up, but due to paucity of time, right, I could not do that. So these ideals it would have been talking about. Then when it talks about institution, you do have various organs of state, various constitutional bodies, right? So those institution perhaps is talked to respect about, right? In case now, if you remember, I had told you that there are certain rights that are negative rights and there are certain rights which are positive rights, right? So one more thing that I had told you, that this fundamental duties are not legally enforceable, but even before the emergence of fundamental duties, right, you would see that there were certain acts, right, which prohibited insult of the national symbols, right? This is national flag, then you have national emblem, right? So you had certain acts, right, which dealt with the insults of these national flag, कि भाई अगर इन चीज़ों का आप अपमान करते हो, insult करते हो, then you will be legally charged, right? So although भाई ये सब चीज़ें आप नहीं करो, you don't want to abide proactively or positively abide by the constitution, no issues. You don't want to respect the ideals that this constitution seeks to promote, no issues. But when you are going to the negative extent, although by positively आप नहीं कर रहे हो, कोई issue नहीं, आप neutral रहना चाहते हो, no issues. But if you are insulting these national honors, right, these flags, these emblems, these things, right, then you will have to go through this legal procedure through the acts that we do have. So you have this Prevention of Insults to National Honor Act 1971, then Flag Code of India 2002, right? तो अगर आप इन चीज़ों का अपमान करते हो, although this is not, these acts are not part of fundamental duties, let me tell you, let me emphasize it again, right? And this is something that Verma Committee had also told, right? जब उसको operationalize करने की जो ड्यूटी थी, right, Verma Committee को दी गई कि भाई आप चेक करो कि कैसे हम लोग fundamental duties को operationalize कर सकते हैं among citizenry, right? So he identified कि already there are certain एक्ट्स, ठीक है, आपको एक सेपरेट लीगल एनफोर्समेंट मैकेनिज्म की ज़रूरत नहीं है, राइट? मोस्ट ऑफ फंडामेंटल ड्यूटीज़, ठीक है, उनका अगर वायलेशन होता है, राइट, तो ऑलरेडी देयर आर एक्ट्स डीलिंग विद द वायलेशन और द इंसल्ट ऑफ दोज थिंग्स, राइट? सो दिस इज़ अ नेगेटिव राइट. एंड वाई नेगेटिव राइट? बिकॉज अगर आप ये नहीं करते हो, अगर ये चीज़ें फॉलो, अगर इन चीज़ों का इंसल्ट करते हो, राइट, तो इन एक्ट्स के थ्रू आप चार्ज हो सकते हो, राइट? सो दिस वाज द फर्स्ट फंडामेंटल ड्यूटी. देन द सेकंड फंडामेंटल ड्यूटी इज, दैट इज 51AB, एंड इट रीड्स टू चेरिश एंड फॉलो द नोबल आइडियाज दैट इंस्पायर्ड आवर नेशनल struggle, right? So the first was talking about noble ideas of constitution, right? This provision is talking about, or this fundamental duty is talking about the noble ideas which inspired our national movement, right? So let us break it up, right? So the first talked about respect ideals of the constitution, that was the previous fundamental duties, and this fundamental duties is talking about respect ideals that inspired national movement, right? और इस तरह के डिफरेंशिएशन आप क्रिएट कर करके इनको याद करना, अदरवाइज यू विल एंड अप मिक्सिंग दीज थिंग्स, बिकॉज नोबल आइडल्स यहाँ भी मेंशन है, नोबल आइडल्स प्रीवियस वाले में भी मेंशन है, राइट? अब इसका क्रिटिसिज्म काफ़ी इस ड्यूटी का हुआ था, दैट दीज नोबल आइडियल्स व्हेन यू आर टॉकिंग अबाउट, राइट, यू हैव नॉट स्पेल्ड इट क्लियरली कि हुज नोबल आइडियल्स. डू यू वांट यंगस्टर्स और द सिटीजन टू फॉलो द नोबल आइडियल्स और द वायलेंट मेथड दैट भगत सिंह preached, or do you want the Gandhian values to be promoted, right? तो इसका भी काफ़ी criticism हुआ था, although there are certain other things on which this fundamental duties were criticized कि भाई right to vote नहीं है, right to pay taxes as a fundamental duties होना चाहिए, but that criticism part we can deal later in this video. Right now let us focus on this second fundamental duties, right? So criticism ये था कि भाई आप क्या चाहते हो, मतलब किस तरह के noble ideals आप चाहते हो, right? कि भाई because these people also had participated, right? And when I am saying कि भाई कौन सा मॉडल फॉलो करना चाहिए, आई एम बाय नो मीन trying to demean the contribution by these people, these category, be it Chandrasekhar Azad, be it Subhash Chandra Bose, because Gandhi alone was not sufficient, ठीक है, कि आपको बैटल विन करवाया जा सके, राइट? बट अगेन जो क्रिटिसिज्म जो हुए हैं, राइट, कि भाई किसके मॉडल्स को फॉलो करना चाहिए, राइट? जब आप बात करते हो कि वैल्यूज values or the noble ideals that inspired this freedom struggle, right? So non-violence, right? Then universal brotherhood, anti-imperialism and humanism were certain virtues, right? That were part of this fundamental, that were part of freedom struggle, right? So these virtue from my assessment, although लक्ष्मीकांत या फिर किसी भी डीडी बासु में भी ये clearly spelled out नहीं है कि what kind of noble ideals that inspired our freedom struggle, but from my experience, from my assessment, these are the features or these are the noble virtues perhaps that would have been talked about, right? So this was your थर्ड एंड दिस इज अ पॉजिटिव राइट बिकॉज अगर इनका फॉलो आप नहीं करते हो तो देर इज नो सच थिंग कॉल लीगल प्रोविजन जिसके अंदर आपको चार्ज किया जा सके, राइट? आप ह्यूमनिज्म नहीं फॉलो करते हो, आप एंटी इंपीरियलिज्म नहीं फॉलो करते, कोई इशू नहीं है, राइट? सो अब कोई मतलब ड्यूटी आती है, राइट? यू शुड बी एबल टू डिफरेंशिएट कि कौन सी नेगेटिव फंडामेंटल ड्यूटी है एंड कौन सी पॉजिटिव फंडामेंटल ड्यूटी है। और कहीं भी अगर मैंने राइट का नाम लिया है, राइट, फंडामेंटल राइट, बिकॉज काफ़ी दिनों से मैं फंडामेंटल राइट का चैप्टर बन रहा था, राइट? तो मिक्सअप हो जाता है कई बार, तो कहीं भी अगर इस सेक्शन में मैं फंडामेंटल राइट बोल रहा हूँ, राइट, और वहाँ ड्यूटी होना चाहिए, तो आप ऑटोमेटिकली समझ जाना यू गाइज आर मैच्योर इनफ, राइट? 51AC, right? So this is the third fundamental duty, right? So to uphold and protect the sovereignty, unity and integrity of India, right? Again ये preamble में भी आपके mentioned है ये all these words, right? Again mixing के chances है, so this is third fundamental duty। और अगर इसको आप नहीं करते हो, right, मतलब अगर ये सब चीज़ें नहीं करते हो तो there is some acts, right? आप पे sedition 124A, right? Then state can go to the extent कि आपको deprive भी कर सके सिटीजनशिप से, राइट, थ्रू सिटीजनशिप एक्ट 1955, राइट? अगर आप ये सब चीजें नहीं करते हो तो, right? Let us move to discuss the fourth fundamental duties, and it reads to defend the country and render the national services when called upon to do so, right? So whenever there is some disaster like situation, whenever there is some war like situation and state or society expects you कि भाई आप अपनी services दो, so on those moments you need to be ready कि भाई आप कंट्रीब्यूट कुछ करो, राइट? इससे भी सिमिलरली रिलेटेड फंडामेंटल राइट में भी आर्टिकल 23(2) भी था, जहां स्टेट कैन ऑब्टेन व्हाट यू कॉल कंपल्सरी सर्विसेज फ्रॉम यू, ठीक है, एंड स्टेट नीड नॉट टू पे इन दैट सिचुएशन। सो कनेक्टेड टू आर्टिकल 23(2) वेयर स्टेट कैन ऑब्टेन कंपल्सरी सर्विसेज, राइट? सो इस तरह के लिंकेजेस बना के, राइट, जैसे ही कुछ आता है तो आपके माइंड में एकदम पॉपअप होना चाहिए, इज दिस रिलेटेड टू फंडामेंटल ड्यूटीज, fundamental rights, DPSP या preamble, right? So this is how you build the linkages। और अभी अगर linkages बना लोगे तो एग्जाम में या फिर टेस्ट पेपर्स करते वक्त आपको डिफिकल्टी नहीं होगी, right? Let us move and discuss the fifth fundamental duty, that is 51AE, and it reads to promote harmony and a spirit of common brotherhood among all the people, transcending religious, linguistic, sectional and regional diversity। And second part of this fundamental duty is to renounce practices that is derogatory to the dignity of women, right? So two parts we do have, right? First part की अगर बात करें तो we do have duty, we as a citizen do have duty to promote harmony and spirit of common brotherhood। So अभी जो दिल्ली riots हुए थे, right, उसमें ये जरूरी था कि we should have promoted हार्मनी एंड स्पिरिट ऑफ कॉमन ब्रदरहुड, राइट? जो मिस्ड अभी इसमें क्या ऑब्स्टिकल क्या बना था, क्यों ये रॉयट्स हुए थे? इट वाज बिकॉज ऑफ रिलीजियस डाइवर्सिटी। सो दैट वाज द थिंग, दैट्स एट टाइम्स यू विल सी डाइवर्सिटी विच इज claimed as our strength, our democratic strength, that becomes obstacle, right? सो यहाँ अभी रॉयट्स हुए थे एंड इस प्रमोशन ऑफ हार्मनी एंड स्पिरिट ऑफ कॉमन ब्रदरहुड को बहुत टाइम लगेगा। जो मिसट्रस्ट अभी सोसाइटी में, दिल्ली की सोसाइटी में अमंग टू रिलीजियस ग्रुप जो पैदा हो गया है, उसको आने में बहुत, वापस आने में बहुत टाइम लगेगा, ठीक है। एंड द सेकेंड इज टू रिनाउंस प्रैक्टिसेस दैट इज डेरोगेटरी टू वुमेन, राइट। अगेन अगर ये सब चीज़ें मैं प्रमोट नहीं करूँ टू प्रमोट हार्मनी, अगर मैं कॉमन ब्रदरहुड इफ आई एम नॉट प्रमोटिंग, राइट, वुड आई बी पनिश्ड? द थिंग इज नो, बट अगेन आपको नेगेटिव एक्सट्रीम पे नहीं जाना है। इफ यू आर नॉट पॉजिटिवली प्रमोटिंग दिस हार्मनी, इफ यू आर नॉट प्रमोटिंग दिस कॉमन ब्रदरहुड, राइट, इफ यू आर नॉट गुड टुवर्ड्स वुमेन, नो इशूज सर, ठीक है, आप एटलीस्ट यू बी न्यूट्रल, राइट। But if you went on to other extreme and became negative, where you start promoting enmity between religious groups, right, there are acts which can deal with you, right. Although again these acts or these provisions in legal system is not part of fundamental duties. Fundamental duties does not, enforcement of fundamental duties does not have any kind of legal sanction, right. ये जो अभी हम लोग ये पढ़ेंगे, right, जो legal provisions, those are not part of fundamental duties, right. So if you are going on the other extreme where you are indulging in increasing the enmity between different group, then there are acts, that is Protection of Civil Rights Acts 1955, then you have UAPA 1967, then there are provisions in RPA 1951, ठीक है, कि आपको आपका कैंडिडेचर जो है वो डिबार किया जा सकता है. then section 153 of IPC 1860, right. इसकी बात करूँ, right, to renounce, the second part, to renounce the practices that are derogatory to the dignity of women, right. So removal of this triple talaq, right, this is a right step. Then you have Sabrimala, right to equality को promote किया है, gender neutrality. In the entry of Sabrimala temple, it has been brought by the Sabrimala issue by the Supreme Court, right. Let us move to the next thing. Okay, common brotherhood यहाँ है, and there is another word called fraternity in preamble, right. So try to connect these two as well. Let us move to the next slide and let us discuss the next fundamental duties, that is 51A subclause F, and it reads to value and preserve the rich heritage and composite culture, right. So what is the composite culture that we do have? So Vasudhaiva Kudumbakam, right, we do respect every guest that we do have. Then something called Ganga Jamuna Tehzeeb, right. The people from Hindi background can understand this dictionary very well, right. So to value and preserve the rich heritage, rich cultural heritage that we do have, and our composite culture, right. So this is what it is talking about. Then 51AG, just forget about this thing right now, just let us read this 51AG, and it talks about to protect and improve the natural environment including forest, lake, rivers and wildlife, and to have a compassionate view towards the living creature, right. So this is 51AG, right, it is talking about environment, right, protection. So environment protection has been talked also in DPSP in article 48A, right, which was added by Madam Gandhi by 42nd amendment, right, in 1976, right. So here you do have article 48A, which is talking about almost similar thing. It's just that because it is in DPSP, so it is state's duty to do this environment protection, and because here it is in fundamental duties, so it is, as a citizen, it is our duty to have all these things, to protect these things, right. So this is what I was talking about. Then if you do not, as a citizen, if you do not protect, if you do not protect it positively, no issues, sir. But if you say that I need tortoise shell, right, in my house for architectural design, if I need the skin of lion, if I need the skin of leopard to decorate my house, right, then there are certain acts dealing with these things, and that is Wildlife Protection Act 1972 that had been brought much before emergence of this or inclusion of fundamental duty in our constitution. And then you have Forest Act, that is in 1980, that is dealing with this protection of natural environment. And if you try to, if again I am saying that if you are not positively protecting it, no issues, this is just a fundamental duty that is expected from you, there is no legal foundation. But if you go on the other extreme where you want to destroy these things, where you want to kill these creatures, then there are acts which will deal with you, right. Let us move to the next slide and let us discuss the next fundamental duties. It talks about to develop the scientific temper, humanism and spirit of inquiry, right. So whatever narrow beliefs that we have held, whatever superstitious belief that we have held so far, those beliefs should be given up, and those should be replaced by this scientific temper, humanism and a spirit of inquiry, that curiousness that we need to develop, right, in ancient system. This is Shastrartha, right, from Chanakya episode. This is, so you need to indulge in this inquiry, this inquisitiveness that you need to develop, right. So this is what it is talking about. Then this 51AI, and it says that to safeguard public property and abjure violence, right. So this is an image from Delhi violence, right, where we burned buses, we burned showrooms, we burned houses, right. So this is talking about this thing, that it is our duty to safeguard public property and observe violence. We should not indulge into these kind of activities, right. There is one related article in DPSP as well, that is article 49, which deals with protection of monuments. Here you do have public property, the only difference is that it is dealing with monuments and places of historical importance, article 49. So just because that the words were almost similar, I just placed it, right. So here it is our duty here to protecting these monuments and places of historical importance was state's duty in article 49, because this article 49 belongs to DPSP, right. Let us move to the next. Okay, one more thing. So if you do not safeguard public property, no issues again, right. If you are not positively doing that duty, performing that duty, no issues. But if you indulge in these kind of activities, there are acts again which will deal with you, right. Let us move to the next slide and let us discuss this second last fundamental duties, and it reads, to strive towards excellence in all spheres of individual and collective activities, so that the nation constantly rises to the higher levels of endeavor and achievement, right. So this is the picture of Kalam, who is teaching almost similar thing, right. So we should always try, we should always attempt to whichever field we are in. We are interested in cricket, be Sachin Tendulkar. You are interested in painting, Hussain. If you are interested in science, you become this Kalam, right. Whichever field you are, just try to be excellent. You want to be IAS, no issues, Ashok Khemka. So because it is our individual, because ultimately it is our individual excellence, right, by which the collection of our individual interest, because ultimately it is our individual excellence by which our nation will constantly grow, right. Collection of individual excellence leads to societal excellence, right. So that is what it is talking about, to strive towards excellence in all sphere of individual and collective activities, so that the nation constantly rises, right. So this was the second last fundamental duties. Let us move and discuss the last fundamental duty, and that is through 86th amendment. This had been added in 2002, right. We changed the subject matter of article 45 in DPSP and added another sub article, that is article 21A into fundamental rights section as well, right. So 86th amendment, you have to remember the year was 2002. The amendments were made in DPSP article 45, then amendment was made into not amendment, addition was made into fundamental rights section as well, where you had a new article 21A. So these many things are related with this act, and here the duty was added of parental duty, and here the duty was added for the parents, and it was made, it is now parents' duty to send their wards to the school, right, because through RTE, Right to Education Act, you already have ensured that these people aging from 6 to 14 will get free education in public schools, right. Now it is parental duty to send these people, these students, these kids into the school, right. So this was all about our fundamental duties, 11 fundamental duties, right. Now there are few questions, right. Criticism, if we say I have not added, there are certain criticisms is that these are illogically arranged, then right to vote is not there, and then right to pay taxes, that had been recommended. These two fundamental duties. Then there are certain criticisms that I have not added, and those criticisms were that the duty to pay taxes, duty to vote, right, these duties are illogically arranged. So these kind of criticism, those minor criticism which had been recommended by Swaran Singh committee, right, if you remember, right, and the executive did not accept. So these are certain criticism that fundamental duties does have, right. Now let us delve into next 4 questions that I have put up, and try to attempt those questions and reply to us to the comment section. So this is the first question that you can see on the screen. Just pause the video and attempt this question. I hope this question is visible. Pause this video and attempt it. Second question, pause the video, attempt it. Third question, pause the video, attempt it. And the fourth question, pause the video, attempt it. So with this, I am wrapping up this fundamental duties section, right. So the in first part only one chapter is pending, that is related to amendment. We already have covered 9 chapters. So I hope you would have completed that as well. So in next 2 or 3 days you will have the next chapter as well, right. Till then, bye bye, thank you.